Hi, horror lovers. Andrea Subasati here, and it looks like I've won a Rondo Award for Writer of the Year for 2018, and so this is just a little video to thank you all for that. I'm really blown away. Like, as editor of a magazine, I spend a lot of time editing other people's writing and elevating other people's writing to put in the magazine. So to be recognized for my writing is a huge honor. It's a tremendous honor to be recognized in a write-in category. I know my last name isn't a whole lot of fun to spell, so thank you all for voting and putting in the effort to do that correctly. And I have to thank David Colton. You know, being in horror journalism and being a horror writer is very much a labor of love, and so too are the Rondo Awards. It's a lot of work on his part, and he puts a lot of care and effort into it. Anytime RUE MORGUE has won a Rondo, it's also come with an email from him personally congratulating me with really thoughtful words, and so I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that the Rondos exist so that those of us in the industry can celebrate each other in this way. So thank you so much for voting, and thanks again.
Welcome back to Anatomy of a Scream. I'm Joe O'Brien, and today we're busting down the doors of reality. For today's show, I'm really excited because I get to talk about a movie that's near and dear to my heart, and a lot of other people's as well. It's the very definition of a cult movie. It's Phantasm from 1979, and this is just one of my favorite films of all time. Not just one of my favorite horror films, but one of my favorite films. And that's in part because it's kind of a movie that defies genre. It is a horror film, but it's not. It's a science fiction film, but it's not. It's a coming-of-age story, but it's not. So Phantasm was the third film by Don Coscarelli. He made it when he was all of 24 years old, which kind of blows my mind to this day. And it was his third feature film that had been theatrically released. His first film was called Jim the World's Greatest. He made it when he was 18 years old. And it was a dark little family drama about featuring Angus Scrimm as an alcoholic dad, and Reggie Bannister was in that cast, and he would obviously go on to become a huge part of Phantasm. His next movie was a very charming little children's film called Kenny and Company, and that was about just being a kid in California in the mid-70s, and it's incredibly charming. And then along comes Phantasm, which has a lot of Kenny and Company in it. In a lot of ways, it's a sequel to Kenny and Company. It feels very much like Kenny and Company, certainly in its opening acts. Phantasm in its opening act is kind of a boy's own adventure with a slightly dark heart. It's about a boy confronting death who's been orphaned. This kid, Mike, played by Michael Baldwin, ostracized slightly by his older brother, who has just lost one of his best friends. He's been murdered. We don't know that. We know that, sorry, but no one else does. And Michael has been observing the funeral and all of these arcane rituals that we have around death, sort of from the periphery, watching the funeral, watching the wake, watching all of these things. And then he spies this terrifying mortician, played by Angus Scrimm, and known only as the Tall Man, lift up a very heavy casket and put it into a hearse. And this sets off a sort of mystery adventure story for him as he tries to figure out what's going on, because there's clearly more up with this tall man than meets the eye. Of course, no one believes him because he's a 12-year-old kid. And so as he's wrestling with both his feelings of abandonment, not only by his parents, but by his brother, who's kind of outgrowing him, he's also confronting this strange mystery, and this all kind of swirls together until he's forced to break into the mortuary and the mausoleum where a lot of the film takes place by himself at about half an hour into the film. And once he gets inside, he discovers something very unexpected. And so do we. So I picked this scene partially because it's just incredibly iconic. It is Phantasm. But I like this scene for very much the same reason I liked the Tina's death scene in A Nightmare on Elm Street. It is the moment when the movie goes from being just a movie to something incredibly special and unique. There is no other scene like this, except in other Phantasm movies, of course. But it's important to remember, you're watching this movie, that sphere is never set up before the first time it appears in this scene. There is no indication that anything like this is going to happen. There is no foreshadowing. There's no suggestion that there is something that alien and that bizarre. It is a totally unexpected moment. It's completely surprising. And your perception of the whole film just gets blown away. You're suddenly in a completely different space, and you're in a place you don't expect, and you don't know what to expect. And at that point, all bets are off. The movie is in a place of pure, unrestricted imagination. And it's amazing what you can accomplish in a film with a little bit of money and a lot of imagination. So we're moving into what is famously, really Phantasm's signature scene. This is Michael Baldwin moving through a really cleverly designed set that they built in a warehouse in Chatsworth. It's built to look a lot bigger than it actually is, and clever editing also has helped sell this. And here it comes, a silver sphere out of nowhere, being hurled like a fastball over Michael's head. They achieve that by literally throwing the ball down a hallway and then filming it in reverse. Check out Michael Baldwin here. He has a mouthful of fake blood that he's about to dispense as he pretends to bite the arm. Oh, there's a quick optical that was replaced digitally for the remastered version. And here comes something no one ever expected, and what's going to become a very famous scene in terms of horror. That's a actual drill being operated by Paul Pepperman being pushed into a prosthetic created by the director's mother, Kate. And now we're just pushing this enormous volume of blood, guaranteeing the film an R rating. It's almost impossible to quantify how bananas and unexpected this moment is. And, you know, bananas and unexpected that urine on the floor is too. There's something you don't often see in horror movies. Somebody peeing themselves as they die. This was apparently also a big problem for the ratings board and nearly got them an X rating. And of course, here we have Angus Scrimm as the tall man. You can really see the influence of Stanley Kubrick on Don Coscarelli here, particularly 2001 with this very stark white set and single point perspective and really careful composition that he's going to break in a moment. This is actually really cool. We're going from a very, very sedate, measured pace, and the movie's about to just lose its shit and go fully handheld as Angus Scrimm pursues Mike like a living nightmare through the halls of this mausoleum. I like this scene because it looks like gunslingers. It's very cool. But then, out of nowhere, boom! Suddenly we're into handheld crazy time. Now, they had a dolly, and they're clearly running on a dolly for that shot, but they've chosen to go fully handheld for this to really play the mania of that moment. And of course, here comes a really fun little moment. And another big unexpected shock. This scene is loaded with them. As Mike chops the fingers to release, what? Gushes of yellow after the gushes of red that we've just seen. Really good use of color. And of course, fingers that are still alive. This is the moment in Phantasm when we really go, this movie is going to be something special. This is going to be something brand new. We've gone from slice of life to slice of death. And of course, killer Jawas. I always like this little touch. He loses his shoe. This is his big transformation as a character as he leaves the film, or as he leaves this scene. I found out many years later that this completely bananas scene was quite appropriately came to Don Coscarelli in a dream that he had when he was 15, and it kind of pursued him through his life until he eventually was able to actually put it on film. It definitely wasn't as easy as it looked. Every scene featuring that sphere needed a different version of the sphere. There was one that they could sort of throw like a fastball and film in reverse to make it look like it was coming at the camera. There was another one that hung on a wire and swung around. And of course, there was the variety of spheres that would attach themselves or detach themselves from actors' heads and push drills through into prosthetics and spout blood, and ones with pumps attached to them to spray blood everywhere. It's a big technical achievement, especially considering how low the budget was, but it was obviously an incredibly important scene, and it obviously became an incredibly important scene, not just for Phantasm, but kind of for horror films in general. Phantasm has always had a very loyal audience, and while they haven't all been blockbusters, people do keep coming back for them, and they respond to them, I think, for the same reasons I respond to them. They are films with heart. Phantasm would have influence in cinema from Nightmare on Elm Street to Star Wars The Force Awakens. The character of Captain Phasma, with her chromed stormtrooper costume, is named for Phantasm. J.J. Abrams was an enormous fan of Phantasm, and in fact went on to cast Angus Scrimm in his TV series Alias for exactly that reason. He's continued to be a big supporter of the film, and in fact was the driving force behind the recent 4K remaster of the film that we just watched part of. So it remains a huge piece of American cinema. It remains an enormous piece of horror cinema, and it is a bona fide classic. There's no other way to put it. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Anatomy of a Scream. We've got some great new episodes planned for you. And if you have any ideas for a film that you'd like to see covered, leave us a comment and a like. We'll see you next time.
Anatomy of a Scream. Phantasm, take one.
Damn it!